Hello again, traders, and welcome back to the Pro Trader Network. In this training video, we're going to talk about how to avoid becoming a trading zombie. Well, what's a trading zombie? If you've been trading for any length of time, you know that staring at your charts for hours on end can put your mind in a total fog. We're going to talk about some techniques in this particular video to stay focused, stay sharp, and to keep our mind alert. You know that constantly staring at your charts can really turn you into a trading zombie. And for some reason, our charts and platform have this strange magnetism. We feel that if we walk away, we're going to miss something. It's this whole fear of loss idea that all of a sudden, the minute we leave, the trading opportunity of a lifetime will have occurred and we'll have missed it. Well, that's really not the case. Traders, the fact is, the longer you're involved in trading, you'll soon begin to realize that price action is price action, and regardless of how long you stare at your chart, you cannot impose your will on the market. So I would advise that in your trading routine, allow for some time to get up from your trade station and walk away. One of the other things I like to do as well is I zoom out or pull back from my chart to simply get a bigger perspective, just a wider view of the markets. And I even use the higher time frames for that as well. What this does is biologically, it refreshes and resets your mind to get you refocused back in the moment. And we call this phenomenon a pattern interrupt. And that's exactly what it is, traders. It's a significant break in your current stream of thought to break the pattern and reset your focus. We know that if we stare at our charts for hours on end, our bodies physically go into this fog where we exhaust our focus and attention. You go from being laser focused to absolutely being completely fogged over. You'll stare at your chart, you don't recognize anything that's happened. It really becomes a blur. Traders, this is a biological effect. Our bodies simply get exhausted and we go into this fog. When we began, we were laser focused, looking at our charts, looking for setups, recognizing patterns. And after a while, if we don't recognize anything but we continue to stare at our charts, all of a sudden they become a blur. It seems as though we can't recognize anything, and we actually mentally feel as though this is the first time we've ever seen our trading platform. In order to refresh and recalibrate our senses, we have to interject some type of interruption so that we can reset. And traders, this is biological. It's also like your sense of smell. It can also be exhausted. When you walk into a room and you smell something instantly, we know after minutes the smell seems to dissipate, when the fact of the matter is the smell still exists, but our olfactory senses simply get exhausted to that particular smell. In our case, we actually need to physically change our focus to allow our minds and bodies to re-energize and regroup. So you really need to build these pattern interrupts into your trading routine, and that's going to keep you at peak performance and especially keep you focused while you're engaged in the market. So traders, how do we adjust to the fog? Well, the minute you feel yourself drifting or losing focus, you'll begin to recognize this feeling, traders, because you'll be looking at your charts, but you really won't see anything. They won't make any sense to you. Introduce a pattern interrupt, and this can get you back on track. And here's some things you might try. I like to get up and simply refill my cup of coffee. My office is in my basement. I have to walk upstairs to refill my cup of coffee. That's a nice 1 or 2 minute break. Sometimes I'll just stand up and walk away. I'll just walk upstairs, see what's going on, see what my family's up to, maybe engage in a short conversation. I'm just taking a mental break for a moment so that I can come back and refocus. Oftentimes too, I'll just stand up from my chair, walk around my office, do a little bit of stretching, maybe a couple jumping jacks. I know that sounds silly, traders, but that gets the blood going and refreshes your mind. Another thing I'll do, traders, if I'm waiting for a signal, and let's say in this example, I'm trading a 1 hour chart, I've got some multiple monitors set up here. I'll study the 4-hour charts. I'll look back at the daily charts. I do a top-down analysis before I trade every day, but I'll revisit some of those higher time frames just to get my mind off my trading time frame, especially if I recognize that I'm going into that trading zombie fog. So here's a great example of a pattern interrupt. You've been listening to my voice now for a few minutes, and I tend to drone on and on and on, I know, trying to share some of these concepts with you. But if I introduce a pattern interrupt, it's going to force you to refocus and re-engage in the content of this video. So for you guys, on the left is a pattern interrupt, and for you ladies, there's a pattern interrupt on the right. Now, it doesn't matter what I particularly say right now, you are completely mentally engaged with these images on the screen. Regardless of what I say right now, I could tell you there's a trade getting ready to happen that will make you a gazillionaire, and your mind biologically will not perceive my comment because it is completely interrupted and completely engaged on these images. That's what a pattern interrupt does. It completely resets your mind. So traders, we need to be prepared, execute a qualified signal, and simply walk away from our platform. After you've entered a trade and placed your stops and targets, there really is nothing left for you to do. So don't stare at each tick in the market. You're going to force yourself to jump on that emotional roller coaster, and that is so unnecessary. It would really help if through your back testing you knew the average duration of your trades. So if the average duration is between 3 to 5 hours, there's no need to check the status of the trade every hour. Come back after 3 hours, come back after 5 hours. If you're trading on the higher time frames, simply walk away and find something else to do. You might want to check the other pairs in your portfolio, especially if you've recognized a potential setup and you're just waiting for a qualified signal. I recommend you develop a routine where you take trades at a certain time and then check on them after a certain time. One of your rules might be, I only take trades during the first 2 or 3 hours of the London market. I know those trades last 3 to 5 hours, so I'm going to check them right before the New York Open. Or, I only take trades the first 2 hours of the New York Open, and I'm only going to check on those trades at the London market close during the New York session. It can't be a surprise to you traders that once again I measure the value of backtesting. This is the type of data that our backtesting will provide and that you need to have and eliminate any emotional investment in a trade. Staring at your charts, traders, for hours on end is just going to burn you out. And then what happens to your internal dialogue? You start second guessing your trade. You start second guessing the placement of your stops or your profit targets. And all of a sudden, you talk yourself out of a qualified signal and qualified analysis that would have given you a high probability profitable trade. All of a sudden, because you're bored or because you can't walk away from your platform, and even if that trade closes in profit, what you've just done is you reinforce that bad habit. And we need to get away from that. Those bad behaviors are exactly what we're trying to get rid of. Because if you're rewarded for that behavior, you'll tend to repeat it over and over again. If you're managing multiple positions in the market, you want to try to find an EA or maybe an indicator that you can preset and then scale out of those trades at your profit targets and then automatically set that trailing stop. And I know there are a ton of those on Forex Factory, so you can just do a search there. Traders, I'd like to share an incredibly valuable secret that I don't often reveal, but I will share it with you because you've been kind enough to subscribe to my blog. I make more money when I walk away from my charts and trust my system than I do when I'm sitting staring at my charts. So traders, think about the time you spend in front of your charts, but more importantly, think about the time you spend in front of your charts after you place a trade. Once you've set your stops and targets, your work is done. The only reason you'll sit and stare at that trade is you haven't placed a protective stop, and we never trade without placing protective stops. People can argue otherwise. As a professional trader, I can say unequivocally that not having a stop in the market is probably one of the most irresponsible things you can do when investing your capital. And the other reason you may move your stops is that you haven't mentally assumed the risk of the trade. That means you don't believe in your plan, you haven't done the back testing, and you don't know probability of your trading plan. Traders, try to implement some of these pattern interrupt techniques. I'm sure they're going to be valuable for you as they are for me. I still use them every day when I trade. And often traders, as we know, sometimes the simplest thing can be the most effective. As always, great to have you back here at the Pro Trader Network. Let's stay focused, follow our rules. We'll see you next time.